think we have some people online. That's maybe what we hear. Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this morning. This was what we call an emergency meeting. As we all know, this wasn't originally scheduled, and you have to adjust that, right? Okay, we're good. So thank you all for being able to adjust your calendars, your schedules to be with us this morning. So I'd like to call to order, and the meeting today is Thursday, November 18th. It's approximately 9:30. And I'm going to ask Mayor Wilson to lead us in prayer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, we come to you once again with bowed heads and humble hearts. Thank you, as always, for your grace and your mercy. Realizing, Father, that over and over again, that through your grace and your mercy, you've been better to us than we've been to ourselves. And with that, we say thank you. Thank you, Father, for letting that light shine on us when our life's ups and downs seem so dark at times. In your word, you tell us to just trust and obey, and that you'll never leave us nor forsake us. Yes, Father, we trust you, but we don't always obey. And yet you still provide us with that unconditional love. And with that, again, we say thank you. Father, you also tell us in your word, after we've done all we can, we just stand. We're standing on your word, knowing that when trouble come our way, you're that bridge over troubled waters. When sickness and illness is upon us, you're that doctor in the sick room. When poor decisions and mistakes are made by us, you're that judge in the courtroom. When plagues and droughts are upon our land, you're the lily in the valley. When we're grieving the loss of a loved one, you're that bridge, that bright and morning star. You're the Alpha and the Omega. You're the beginning and the ending. And finally, Father, we ask a special blessing for the chairperson of this meeting and all of us whom you have allowed to be assembled here today, realizing that we are no strangers to each other, just perhaps friends whom we have not yet met. We give you all the praises and the glory. Amen.
Join us in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you. That was very nice.
Thank you.
Mayor Wilson, it's good to have you back.
Okay. We have some new members who just joined us. Thank you. Margie, can you roll call so we can establish a quorum present?
Yes, sir. At this time, I'm only asking those board members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. I want to remind you that pushing the button on the base and when the top part of the microphone is red, it means you're on and the recording picks you up.
Okay.
If you can please state your name if you're an alternate on here on behalf of a TPA board representative. Steve Wilson,
Here.
Yvette Drucker,
Here.
Andy Thompson,
Thankful to be here.
Stephen Grant, Shelley Petrolia. Here. Joel Flores, Jim Koretsky,
Here.
Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Joni Brinkman. Here. Catherine Waldron,
Here.
Chelsea Reed,
Here.
Melissa McKinley,
Dave Kerner on behalf of Melissa McKinley.
Maria Marino, Maria Sachs, Greg Weiss, Shirley Lanier, Michael Napoleon, Christina Lambert. Here. Joseph Paduzzi,
Here.
Robert Weinroth,
Here.
Fred Pinto.
Here.
We have a quorum in person, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Nick has one as well as I.
Mr. Chair, good morning, everyone. I did receive a request from DOT staff late yesterday evening They were disappointed that we had lost a quorum before we could officially respond to their draft work program in October. And they had asked if the board would be willing to adopt a resolution this morning as an add-on item endorsing the work program that was presented to the TPA governing board in the October meeting. There was, just for the rest of the board who maybe had left early, there were enough board members here to have an informed discussion. I think we had reached 10 in person. And the consensus was that we would like to respond affirmatively to the DOT's draft work program, but that we didn't have enough people physically assembled to do so. So if the board is willing, I'm requesting the addition of a resolution endorsing the draft fiscal 23 through 27 work program, both the Turnpike and District 4 components that were presented in October. And I'd like to have this item disposed of prior to the first action item on the agenda so that we could move to the rest of the content.
Any comments from members on the board? Is there anyone on the board who is opposed to including this agenda item?
Move to approve the modified agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. We didn't have to take a roll call on that, right?
No, I
Okay.
count the members.
All right, so that item was approved. I think it's, it was funny kind of because our last meeting ran a little long, as some of our meetings do, and we lost our physical quorum, and we realized then that even though we had additional people online, the rules say we have to have a physical quorum to take a vote. Although the request came in somewhat late, asking us to include it today, we thought it was in the spirit of goodwill and working with FDOT for us to do this today. So thank you all for that.
And Mr. Chair, I also have a modification. I have a few members that are participating remotely that wish to be approved to join. I have County Vice Mayor Weiss and Commissioner Marino are in Tallahassee attending the Florida Association of Counties Conference, and Councilman Napoleon is feeling ill, so he did not come into our office. And they are both, there three of them are requesting the board permission to
Are
join.
they
it.
ready? Are they online already?
Yes,
So
sir.
they can hear us? Okay, is there anyone here on the board who is opposed to including these three members remotely? Seeing none, then, all right, they're participating in the meeting.
Okay, I will mark
Okay.
their attendance in the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Just as a reminder for the general public, as there are three ways to provide public comments for this meeting. One is written comments may be submitted online at the website that is provided in the agenda. There can be verbal comments may be made by a virtual attendee using the raise hand feature on the Zoom platform. And there may be verbal and written comments provided in person, attending and submitting a comment card available at the welcome table. Marge, do we have any requests for public comments at this time?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then right now, then we'll close the floor on public comments. We're going to move right into the agenda this morning unless there's anything pressing that a board member would like to share. If not, all right, in the essence of time, then we're moving right to item 2A, which is a motion to adopt a resolution providing amendments to section 2 of the TPA operating procedures. I'm going to ask Nick to present us this item to us to walk us through it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a very short presentation. You can see that the three bullet points in the agenda are pretty clear in what we're asking the board to consider and act on this morning. Ultimately, the reason for this action is that the operating procedures or the bylaws of this governing board require the election of officers to be conducted at the last meeting of the calendar year, and those new officers to take office at the first meeting of the following calendar year. And so what we're proposing to you in order to allow you to elect officers today is modifications to the operating procedures that basically say, if you want to elect officers early, you can. And if you want to allow the new officers to take those positions immediately, as opposed to waiting until the first of the calendar year, you're also permitted to do that. The idea here is that the executive committee that was approved by the governing board at the October meeting could be created this morning, and those officers could take effect tomorrow to really facilitate the transitional process of selecting a new executive director for the TPA. So that's the basis of this. And then the third component of this item, Kelsey, if you can jump to maybe just the third slide, because I've kind of talked through the second slide already. The third component of this item is to expand upon the roles in the operating procedures that are delegated to the executive committee The key bullet here is number 3, meet as necessary to facilitate the process of hiring a new executive director. Some things that I want to make sure that you're aware of in this, including but not limited to refining the job profile that will be used for the recruitment of candidates, evaluating the candidates, which would occur by the executive committee members, the 5 members of this governing board that would be assembled, ultimately recommending a candidate for action by the full governing board, including the negotiation of the terms and conditions of the employment agreement for the board to act on. This committee could not act on that alone, but they would recommend to the full board an action for that. And then also an item on their to-do list would be, if necessary, because they are unable to get an executive director in place by the end of January when my resignation becomes effective, they would be recommending an interim director for, again, board consideration. They're not authorized to establish a relationship with an interim director, but they would be able to recommend someone to function in that capacity that could be acted upon by the full board. And then we also thought it was prudent to add paragraph 4, which says, if along the way the board decides that they want the executive committee to perform additional tasks, then you certainly have that opportunity at any of the regularly assembled meetings. And Mr. Chair, that's it. That we really want this item to modify the bylaws or operating procedures so that you can take the action recommended in item 2B on the agenda this morning. So this really sets you up and gives you permission to do the rest of the agenda.
Okay. Before we take comments from members on the board, do we have any public comments on this agenda item?
No, Mr. Chair.
Have we received any comment? No comment cards were submitted locally as well.
No.
Okay, so I'm closing public comment on this agenda item and look for questions, comments from members on the board.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have to do this by roll call, or can we do it by
Voice is fine.
voice? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. Please let the record show that the item was approved unanimously with no objections. Okay, moving along to item 2B, which is a motion to adopt a resolution approving early election of 2022 officers, establishing individuals who will serve as the 2022 officers, and commencing the terms of the 22 officers on November 19th, which is tomorrow. The attached draft resolution affirms the TPA's desire to elect the 2022 officers at this meeting, elects a chair, a vice chair, and 3 at-large representatives to serve as the 2022 officers. And it affirms the TPA's desire to have the items of the 2022 officers commence on November 19th. So with this, I guess what I want to do is begin to open the floor for nominations, unless there's any questions.
I would request members of that are able to be appointed to the chair, because there are requirements, correct?
Yes, there are. You want to?
Sure. And Kelsey, maybe you can pull up that the first slide for us on this item. So there is criteria in the operating procedures that for a board representative to serve as an officer of the TPA governing board, which includes all 3 of these positions, the chair, the vice chair, or any of the 3 at-large positions, that board representative should have completed the MPOAC Institute for Elected Officials training opportunity, which is conducted twice yearly in the spring. April and May sessions are available, but we've also made that training available locally, and there's an online opportunity to do that at your leisure as well, or to attend a major national transportation conference such as the American MPO Association, who conducts an annual conference. The National Association of Regional Councils would conduct a conference like that, or any sort of similar training that says you've been given exposure to what it means to be an elected official and to make decisions regarding transportation investments for the betterment of your communities. Ultimately, that criteria, the training criteria, can be waived by the governing board. So if you want to put someone into the position of an officer who doesn't meet that criteria to having done that, you're free to do so. But we do provide in the backup material and here on the screen this morning a list of those elected officials who serve currently as representatives of the TPA governing board who have completed that requisite training.
All right, so I'd like to nominate our current vice chair, the mayor of Palm Beach County, Robert Weinroth, as the chair, and then Chelsea Reed as the vice chair.
You have a second?
And I do have, I heard a second from, I believe it was Commissioner Kerner, but I also have a hand raised from Councilman Napoleon.
Oh, I was going to second. Sorry.
technically for nominations, you don't need a second.
Yeah, that's true, technically. Okay. Are there any other nominations?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Marino for vice chair.
So what do we have? Two nominees for vice chair? All right, so what we'll do is we'll take the vote on the nomination for chair. Is that a roll call? It's not a
No,
roll call.
if there's only one, we don't. If there's
Oh,
only-
all right, well, there are no other nominations, then that's, you're it, okay.
Thank you.
We'll
And
take-
I'm sorry, just to be clear, Commissioner Lambert, did you have a comment on this for the chair or vice chair?
No, for a member at large.
Okay.
Maybe we could just clarify this process a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah,
So would we like to start with just chair and then move on to
Vice
vice
chair,
chair
right.
and move on to?
and then,
okay.
yes, then members at large.
And then maybe just could we ask if there are any more nominations for chair before moving on?
I just did. Are there any other nominations for chair? I thought I just asked that, no?
I thought you asked if there was
Okay, but-
approval, so.
Well, I did, okay, I did ask. There were no more nominations, so Ryan Worth is the new chair.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other nominations for chair, then what I would recommend is that you take a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Mayor Weinroth,
All right.
just to make it
For the
official.
record, we will close nominations for chair, and we have unanimous selection of Mayor Ryan Worth. Is that okay? All right.
I'd, Mr.
I'm sorry, I
Chairman,
didn't see your comment.
I'd like to move that we close nominations for chairman and that we nominate Mayor Weinroth.
Second.
Thank
All
you.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. Okay. We get it right yet?
You got it.
Okay. All right. We have two nominations for vice chair. Who are those two nominations? Repeat those again.
Oops, my microphone's on. I have Chelsea
Mayor
Reed.
Reed
and Maria
Commissioner
Marino.
Okay, so by show of hands, is that how we do this? Show
And
of
then,
hands?
Chair, I just want to clarify, those were the original ones. I don't know if you want to ask if there's any
Do we have
additional
any
nomination.
additional nominations
vice
for
chair?
vice chair? I guess we don't. So how do we do this? A show of hands for one and,
I think we
or
should
the
have a
other?
roll call, Mr. Chair.
all right, let's have a roll call and they would
Thank you.
indicate who they are voting for.
Okay, so
Can we do
just for
that?
clarification, it'll be either for Maria Marino or Chelsea Reed.
Okay.
So Steve Wilson,
Can't go wrong, but I go with Commissioner Marino.
Yvette Drucker,
I'm going to go with Chelsea Reed.
Andy Thompson,
Reed.
Stephen Grant,
Reed.
Shelley Petrolia,
Reed.
Joel Flores,
Reed.
Jim Koretsky, Marino, thank you. Christopher McBoy,
Reed.
Joni Brinkman,
Reed.
Catherine Waldron,
Marino.
Chelsea Reed,
I will choose Marino.
Melissa, I'm sorry, Dave Kerner,
Marino.
Maria Marino,
Maria Marino.
Maria Sachs, Greg Weiss,
Marino.
Shirley Lanier,
Marino.
Michael Napoleon,
Chelsea Reed.
Christina Lambert,
Reed.
Joseph Paduzzi,
Reed.
Robert Weinroth,
Marino.
Fred Pinto,
Reed,
I think it's 11.
I have 10 for Marino and 11 for Reed. So Vice Mayor Reed won as the vice chair.
I believe.
Oh,
the
did I
num-
miscount?
You have the right winner. I had it as 12-9, but it was clearly Vice Mayor Reed was the elected vice chair.
Okay, do you want me to clarify the number? Okay.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. I'm sorry, just for clarification, both myself and our legal counsel got the same number. So, but I do have it as Vice Mayor Reed as our new vice chair.
Congratulations, Vice Mayor Reed. Mr. Chair, if you would open nominations for the at-large representative, I would like to nominate Commissioner Marino for one of those seats.
The floor is so open for nominations for one of the at-large.
I'd like to nominate Mayor Fred Pinto.
I'd like to nominate Councilman Michael Napoleon.
I would also like to nominate myself. I feel like I could bring some diversity to that board.
So how many is that?
Four.
Four?
We have 4 so far. We have Marino, Pinto, Napoleon, and Flores.
Okay.
I'd
I
like
will-
to,
Go ahead.
can I nominate Chelsea Reed? Or
So
is Chelsea,
since-
is Chelsea automatically, is Chelsea automatically on because she's vice chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, never mind. It's just a love fest. Chelsea and I, it doesn't matter between the two of us.
I will withdraw my name for consideration for the at-large roles. So now we have
Close
3.
nominations.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I was gonna move to close the nominations and approve the slate of 3 officers.
Second. There's 4.
No,
No.
There's
yes,
3.
he
just removed
withdrew.
Oh, just removed?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that.
So I'm sorry for clarification for me. I have a motion by Kerner and I missed the seconder. Weinroth,
Is it-
thank you.
Who did you get, Margie?
So I have Commissioner Marino, Councilman
No,
Napoleon.
I'm sorry, it's the
and-
seconder. I want to make sure. our
Oh,
notes clear.
Robert Weinroth.
Okay. I was trying to
Right.
give Joe credit because I thought he moved on it too. but-
I'm sorry.
All
Okay.
right, so do we have a motion and a second? Then we just take a up or down, right?
Let's,
All in
let's-
favor?
let's,
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. Okay, we now have our executive committee is formed.
And then Mayor, I'm sorry, I failed to remind you that we had added an item for the FDOT work program. So before we move on to the item regarding the consultant for the executive director, if we can take that item up that the board approved.
Couldn't we
okay.
do that?
I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that we go ahead and approve 2B1, which is going to
Yes.
include the 5 names that we've just approved in our election.
Yeah, you need to approve the resolution. now
The
that
original resolution. Okay,
You filled in the names.
I look for a motion for approval of the resolution.
Move to approve the resolution 2021, which is item 2B1.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have no opposed. Okay. Now,
Now you need to go back to the DOT action.
Um, since we modified it to allow it to be considered, now we just have to adopt it.
right, so what we agreed to was to put it on the agenda.
Right.
It's out of the order, but it's fine.
Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, I think Margie's right. What I asked for in the modifications to the agenda section of this was to consider adoption of the resolution as the first action item before 2A. And then I think we all assumed that because the modification was considered favorably, that constituted adoption of the resolution, but that's really not true. The action that was taken initially was to add the item to the agenda. Now we have to actually
Vote on it.
take a second action to adopt the resolution.
okay. Do we need to repeat the resolution? Anyone have questions or comments? If not, I look for a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so it's really adopted now.
Really adopted.
Okay. Move. Anything else?
No,
Margie?
we're good. We
No,
can
we're
move
good?
on.
We can move on to item C. This is a motion to approve execution of the chair on behalf, the execution by the chair on behalf of the TPA of a contract with whoever is selected as the group to administer the process and to recommend a new executive director. So we're going to get an update from Nick on the candidates who submitted, companies that submitted proposals.
and Mr. Chair, just for the board's benefit, I recognize this is slightly atypical to present options to you like this, as opposed to presenting a recommendation for a contract. However, I also recognize that I'm in a position of not having to live with the decision that is made and wanted to give the board an opportunity to express any particular interests or preferences for one of these four firms. That being said, I've done a brief comparison of the four firms, and I'm going to start with a timeline just to make sure you understand basically the sequence of events. This was common for all four of the proposals. They expect the process of helping the TPA select the candidate that will serve as your new executive director to take between 90 and 120 days. That's the typical calendar that all four of the proposers included. All four of them included a component that would perform an assessment of the TPA and essentially establish or at least refine the position profile that would be used for advertising this position. Ultimately, this is an opportunity for as much or as little self-reflection as the TPA governing board wants to undertake. You can say, we know who we are and we know what we want, and just use what you've got and move forward. Or you can say, let's have a bit more of a thorough process of interviews and interactions with executive committee members, or even a larger cross-section of the TPA governing board, to ensure that the candidate selected represents the desired direction that you want the TPA to go forward. Ultimately, because of the modification to item 2A, the executive committee is now authorized to approve the position assessment. So that helps you in that you don't have to convene another a special meeting of the governing board and gather all 21 of you together to ensure that the position can be advertised. It's really a delegated responsibility to refine that and authorize the firm to move forward. At that point, once the executive committee says go on the profile, the firm that you select would then be advertising the position and recruiting candidates using their networking and their avenues for soliciting potential applicants to you. The firm would evaluate initially anyone who is submitted and screen out underqualified or unqualified candidates. So they would ultimately be presenting those qualified candidates to the executive committee. The executive committee would then review the recommended candidates and then schedule both remote interviews and then on-site or in-person interviews. Anyone who reaches the on-site interview portion of the process would be background checked by the search firm. And then ultimately, the executive committee would be delegated the responsibility of identifying a recommended candidate for presentation to the governing board, negotiating a contract for consideration by the governing board, and then ultimately that action item would be presented to the full TPA governing board with the candidate's endorsement, as well as the executive committee's endorsement saying the terms and conditions are acceptable. This is the person we want to bring on board, and the full board would have the opportunity to ratify that contract. So that's the schedule. That was really common with maybe a few nuances, variations in how they described it, but that was common to all four proposals. And I wanted to make sure that I walked you through that before we get to the next portion. As far as the firms go, there are four who have proposed. I've listed the names of the firms as well as the names of their project managers. I'm going to focus primarily on the firm experience row in this table. All four of these firms have a lot of experience placing executive directors of agencies or county or city managers of agencies, managers, administrators, the lead entity for local governments. I'm going to say what struck me about this was the first GovHR and then the third and fourth SGR and Slave and Management seem to have a bit more experience replacing directors of transportation agencies, whereas the Mercer Group, while they have extensive experience replacing lead executive roles for local governments, especially in Florida, had a little bit less experience replacing, seeking out and recommending candidates for a transportation agency like the TPA. Another thing I'm going to focus on in the observations, I did think that the GovHR proposal did a great job of emphasizing social media and really committing to facilitating and supporting the executive committee in the interview process and in the selection of candidates. All of these firms guarantee appointment for at least 1 year. Some of them go farther, 18 months for SGR and 24 months for Slave and Management. And they're really all competent to perform this task. And really their fees are within the ballpark of one another. So I guess my position is, without making an overt recommendation, that you really can't go wrong with these options. Maybe a couple more comments on the firm experience. and then I'll leave it to board discussion. But just so you're aware, I know transportation world, we use too many acronyms. ARC is the Atlanta Regional Commission. So that is the MPO for the Atlanta mega region. And that's the executive director position for that. That person is retiring, and GovHR is facilitating the search for the Atlanta region. So and they also facilitated the search for the Hillsborough Area Regional Transportation or Transit Agency, or HART. And so they recently hired a CEO, and that those are some high profile transportation positions within the southeast part of our country that they were able to facilitate. SGR is currently facilitating the River to Sea TPO director replacement. That is the Daytona area MPO just north of us on the coast. And then I wanted to mention Slavin Management has performed search services, recruitment services for the Metroplan Orlando MPO in 2018, when that position was vacated by their longtime director. And that went very smoothly as well. So again, those three firms have high levels of experience with transportation related positions. And I wanted to make sure I explained a little more about what they've done and where they've worked in Florida and in this part of the country. And so, Mr. Chair, I'll do my best to answer any questions. I know Margie and I have both looked at the proposals. They're fully included. All the proposal content is included in the backup for the agenda. But we really, I guess the point is, we would really recommend that the board, even though this is complicated, difficult, maybe feels uncomfortable, that you would make a choice this morning, because it will help move the needle forward. It will advance the ball and allow this process to commence, so that the search firm that is selected can then meet with the executive committee and we can really get the ball rolling.
All right. Before we take comments from members on the board, do we have any public comment requests out there?
No, Mr. Chair.
So no one submitted prior, nobody's got their hand raised, and we have no comment cards. All right,
No.
then I'm gonna, go ahead.
No, I was going to note that Commissioner, I'm sorry, I have to get used to this now. Vice Mayor Weiss did raise his hand as well virtually.
All right, well, why don't we let him go first, since he's virtual? We're closing, for that, I'm gonna close public comment on this agenda item, and let's hear from the board. So,
Thank you.
Vice
Thank
Mayor,
you.
you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just, I went through the proposals, looked at the material in the backup package, and in looking at the experiences, one of the criteria, though, that I thought was really important was the size of the population of the areas they were recruiting for, because a number of them, although having lots of recruitment experience, were working in much smaller populated areas. And so in my analysis, looking through that, I thought Slavin had the largest number of recruitments for the largest population centers, more akin to Palm Beach County. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to move this to the Slavin Management Company.
The motion is for what?
For
Slavin.
the number 4 on the agenda, it's Slavin Management Consultants.
All right, the floor's not, okay, we'll hold off on that motion because we still have comments from other members. I don't know who was up first. Were you first? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to put something else on the table to see if there's some traction. I'm going to make a motion to substitute for what's been placed before us, a motion to hire, postpone the hiring of a national search firm for 90 days to rehire the former deputy director of multimodal development as the interim director, and then we can decide as an executive board and as a full board whether to then go forward with a national search.
I'd like to
That
second
would be
that.
Valerie Nielsen.
Nielsen.
Just as a sort of a background, as you know, Ms. Nielsen had left to move to Alaska. She has returned back to our community. I've had some conversations with her. She has been employed by West Palm Beach, and notwithstanding that employment, would love to come back. I've had some conversations with her, and I think if I'm not mistaken, Nick, the multimodal development position is still open at this moment.
That's correct.
All right, so that wouldn't put us in a situation where if we decided not to hire her as the full the executive director later on, there would still be a role for her in this agency if we so chose, or the new executive director so chose. So I would like to, again, place on the table a substitute motion to 2C, postponing the national search and then engaging the former deputy director of multimodal development as interim director, and then allow the executive board and this body to make a decision within 90 days of how we want to proceed.
I'd like to second that motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Point of order, we
Yeah.
talked about not seconding a motion until everybody was finished.
So, yeah,
Just nominations.
Okay. Who was next up?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Well, my first comment was on the original motion, which was to put a recommendation in front of the TAC board, because I do believe that the next executive director needs to have that type of skill. And so before the executive committee reviews the final candidates, that the TAC board also reviews them. And then as for the new motion, I am also in favor of that.
You had your card up, right?
I did, but I was just going to mention what
Oh, okay.
Mayor Weinroth said. So I agree with what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity, the motion that's pending on the floor is to hire on an interim basis, is it Valerie?
The motion is to hire the former deputy director of multimodal development as the interim director, and to also be the multimodal development deputy director.
I support your motion, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question. Does the appointment become effective on the 20th of January? Is that what's envisioned, or immediately?
My thought would be as soon as we can get a letter of understanding with that person. I guess the next, if this passes, I would ask for a motion or a direction from this board to have the clerk or the someone from this body, I guess we'll talk to Nick, who would be the most appropriate to draft the necessary letter for Ms. Nielsen to be reemployed at her former salary in her former position.
That's what I wanted to clarify. If it was effective immediately, I wanted to make sure that as part of that motion, there was somebody on behalf of the governing board or its professional staff that could act on behalf of the board in retaining her and executing the necessary documents, so that the board didn't have to come back to authorize it.
Right. Thank you.
And Mayor, I do have Councilman Napoleon with his hand raised as well.
Okay. Councilman?
Good morning. Again, I apologize for not being there in person, but I think you'll all be very thankful next week that I was not there in person, because you don't want what I've been dealing with. Before COVID, we used to actually get really bad colds, and that's what I had all week this week. So thank you for letting me appear virtually. And I had a comment that, it's on topic, but it's a little off point from what we're talking about. And I appreciate, what Nick has done for this organization and how what he has built up in the new office and everything he's done. And I know that the last year and a half has been a difficult year, a difficult time for everyone. And I haven't talked to Nick about this. I only talked to him briefly after he tendered his resignation. But I would like to consider, or Nick to consider, versus resigning, considering taking a 3-month leave of absence, just to make sure that, a chance to recharge his batteries and make sure this is really what he wants to do. Because I think Nick's leadership has been really invaluable for guiding this organization forward. And I would hate to see him leave only to, 3 months later, regret that choice. And I don't know exactly what's gone on in Nick's life. I don't know if he's dead set on leaving, but I'd like to at least know if that's something he'd consider. And if not, then I'm happy to discuss the other options. But I'd like to know if Nick would consider, turning his resignation into a leave of absence to reflect and, see if this is really what he wants to do. Because again, I think there's going to leave a big void when Nick's gone.
Mr. Chair, I would respond by saying, Michael, thank you very much for those kind words, but I've made my decision and I'm ready to move on.
You have Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you very much. In order to put this into a framework where we know exactly where we're going, there has been now a fifth entity that wants to come into the mix for our decision-making on who should really carry the leadership forward. Is that the understanding that we have, Mayor Weinroth? Is that you have discussed this issue with someone else who would like to now come and be part of the recruitment, one of the selection of the recruitment firms?
Mr. Chair, with your permission. Valerie Nielsen had been employed by this agency for approximately 6.5 years. She had terminated her employment on unsatisfactory relationship with this agency because of personal reasons. She wanted to relocate to Alaska. Apparently, that did not work out, and she's back. She has accepted employment with West Palm Beach, but I have had conversations with her, and I think if she had not terminated her employment, this conversation today would have been a lot different, because I think our current executive director had relied upon her as his deputy in many fashions, and I will not speak for him, but I think that her experience here would be invaluable. It would help in the transition. It would give us an opportunity to have continuity, work with her and if we decide that we still need to do a search, we would have that opportunity. But I think that she would give us great continuity. And again, she understands what's going on in Palm Beach County because she's been a part of this TPA for a long period of time.
That's very well said, and I agree that it would be probably a lot smoother to have somebody who is a deputy to come back and to take that position, and then it would be a seamless leadership role. However, I don't know if this is something she wants to do. Has there been a letter submitted to indicate this, or is this a motion that you're making at this time based on a conversation that you had with her? Or would you like to table the entire issue and give her an opportunity to send a letter indicating her willingness to take over this role?
Again, with your permission, Chair. I have had conversations with her. She's also actually had conversations with Todd Bonlaren, as you know, a member of our staff at the county. She has very strong desire to return to this agency. She would have come today, but I counseled her not to come. I told her it would probably not be appropriate for her to be here for these conversations. I think that the letter that you are seeking could be executed within 24 hours. She is ready to take on the responsibility. And I think that I have no question in my mind, if this board goes along with my substitute motion, that she will accept the employment that we are offering her, with the understanding that she will not necessarily be executive director. She will be interim. She will be the multimodal development deputy director, but that her continued employment past the point in which we actually make a decision on executive director, if it's not her, her continued employment would be up to that executive director.
So in other words, what you want to do is you want to table this decision on one of these four groups pending so many days, 90 days, maybe 30 days, pending her letter to us indicating her willingness to take on this position, so that we can decide on that within 30 days. And I would accept that. I think it's a good idea.
All right.
Okay.
And again, I think because we have the executive board now, we'll be a little more nimble, and we'll be able to react more quickly to a situation. If for some reason she wakes up this morning and says, that was a mistake, I'm going back to Alaska, we'll be able to do something else. But I think that I'm very comfortable in the fact that I'm representing today, that if this board accepts my substitute motion, she will execute the letter, come back on the payroll in the identical payroll, salary, and benefits that she had before she left.
I would just suggest, Mayor, and chair people, that we review the letter first, because I mean, I think it's a great idea, but it would be nice if I could review a letter from her indicating her willingness and indicating that this is something that she absolutely wants to do.
Okay, let me
Good.
offer another context on a way of handling this. Now that the executive committee has been established, my anticipation, I would assume that that committee would at least try to convene the week after Thanksgiving week, which is next week. Nobody's going to do anything next week, but the week after, have that executive committee convene then, and then take up this recommendation, this nomination as executive committee, which would give enough time for a formal transmittal of a letter and indication and the things that you're talking about. Nothing as much is going to happen now between next week, which everybody kind of shuts down. And so the executive committee will be able to address that the week after very quickly.
I think
Mayor,
we just
I'm
hear
sorry,
from our
Mayor.
attorney first.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Paul.
I think there's one concern with the operating procedures, and that is that whoever is the director hires the subordinates. That would not stop you from retaining Valerie as interim director, but installing her in her old position might be problematic under your bylaws.
Yeah. So.
What was that name?
So that our Mayor Weinroth has to amend his motion so that it's not the aspects of putting her in as the multimodal director, just as the interim director for the 90 days, and that this board would make a recommendation before the end of the 90 days to continue her as the interim director, or hire one of the firms, or appoint another interim director. And so that way, the letter, I believe, to the Valerie would be on the terms of a 90-day aspect of interim director.
I'll accept that as a friendly motion. So we'll delete the deputy director of multimodal development as part of the offer.
All right. Yeah.
One thing I'm not completely clear about is that, and, I'm certainly supportive of, bringing her back in consideration, as the interim. But I want to be careful, at least for my thought, that ideally there would be a transition with Nick still being the director. And I'm wondering if what is being proposed here, I really want to understand that. She becomes interim, then is the ask then that Nick is no longer the director? Because I'm not thrilled about that. I would prefer it to be worked out that he was the director until I heard down the other end, is it effective January 20th, right? So the way it was going seemed to be more practical. She was coming back into her old position. Then she'd be available to become the interim effective January 20th, which I haven't gone back to look at Nick's letter, but I think that was the date. So I'm just wanting to express,
I think it's important, if we're going to appoint an interim director, there has to be overlap between the existing director.
Yes.
Because what's really going to happen during that interval is a transition of things that are in the air right now, things that have to be done, what the current priorities are, so that the interim director doesn't just get parachuted into a situation without having that transitional process.
right. But if we bring her on as an interim, then we've in fact, in my mind, made a decision that she now, and I'm not prepared to do that today.
No, the motion was for 90 days.
No, but to bring her on, once you bring her on as interim, she is the, I'd ask the
As the
attorney for guidance about that.
Yeah, I think where Councilman Koreski is going is that if you make that appointment today, you, in essence, based on where we're at this point, you're going to have two directors. You're going to have Director Nick and you're going to have Interim Director Valerie. Now, one way to resolve that, if you wanted to move forward with where Mayor Weinroth is going, is to see if if Nick wants to terminate earlier than his 90 days. He's given his resignation letter, he's given his 90 days notice, which he's required to do under his contract. No one, I think, has talked with him about, would he be interested in leaving earlier? And I think as part of that, if he leaves earlier, I think Mayor Pinto has raised a good thing, and that is that there probably needs to be a good relationship with Nick on his departure so that he can be of assistance to Valerie, and she can call on him from time to time, over the next 90 days. But it's a little confusing, but I hope you see where I'm going with this.
Mayor Pinto, I was going to bring this up after, but as our council has alluded, Nick is pretty well restrained from his ability to look for employment during this period. His contract says he shall remain in exclusive employment of the TPA until termination of this agreement and shall not accept or become employed by any other employer until said termination. So this really is handcuffing him. I was also concerned that I understand that Nick has been working virtually for the period of time since, and I don't know if it's since he's given us his notice of resignation or prior. I'm concerned, and again, we all respect Nick and we all respect what he's done here, but if his mind is really not focused on this agency anymore, he's looking beyond it, I think we would be better served and we would serve him better if we took advantage of the contract provision wherein if the director resigns, as he has done and has given us 90-day notice, we have the opportunity to say to him, thank you, and we are now releasing you from the contract, and his employment would be terminated. He would continue to receive the benefits of this contract through the 90-day period, but then we would be able to do our transition. I'm sure Nick would work with us during that 90-day period, even though he was no longer employed, to help us in that transition. I think that would be cleaner. And again, releasing Nick from this restriction in the contract that's not allowing him to legally accept any other employment. So
I think that, you want to comment, Nick? I'm sorry. Oh, I think that's really what I meant when I said transition, that falls under that heading of one of the things that can occur as part of that transition, but it'd be done in an orderly fashion. And what looks Nick's input. You have a hand raised.
Sorry. Yes, I do have a few 10 cards up and I do have the virtual hands raised. I have Weiss, Marino, Napoleon, Brinkman, and Flores, and
I don't know who was
Wilson.
first.
can we ask Nick, I don't want to put you on the spot, Nick, but if this body was to make the decision to release you from the contract that you are now obliged to, commit yourself to, which includes the fact that you have to give us full loyalty, can't look for another job, can't accept another job. And we were willing to agree that your compensation and benefits would continue through the period of your notice. Would you find that to be an acceptable resolution of your employment?
I'm going to make two comments. One is that those are the terms of the contract. So I've already agreed to that. If I provide resignation notice with a 90-day window and you choose to say, we don't need you for the next 90 days, you have the authority to do that. I've already signed that agreement. It's balls in your court to make that decision. I also want to underscore that the fact that we can't have two directors. So if you want to appoint someone as an interim director, you should avail yourself of the provision in the contract that says you no longer need me as your director, which I've already agreed to by signing the contract.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, we got comment cards up. I'm not sure what the order was, but we'll start out with Joe. Mitchell.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Can you please turn your microphone on for me?
I think it was Vice Mayor Weiss. I think he raised his hand like 3 times, so he should probably go first. And he has a motion on the table, by the way.
Yes, Vice Mayor Weiss.
Thank you. I'd like to, number one, I want to withdraw my original motion. I am also supportive of the motion that Mayor Weinroth has put on the table. I think, this is a very obviously is become very complicated, but on the other hand, I think for the benefit of the agency to get somebody in there as quickly as possible, and I think it actually can be done before the holidays, is of utmost importance, so that there is no lack of continuity. I also, in addressing the comments from my colleague, Commissioner Sachs, I also had conversation with Ms. Nielsen, and she relayed exactly the same comments to me that she relayed to Mayor Weinroth, and in regards to her willingness to make this change from the city CRA over back to the agency. And so I'm fully supportive of it, and to try and get it done as quickly as possible. And I think utmost haste at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm finished. Thank you, sir.
All right. We have other hands raised.
Yes, you have
Remotely?
Marino and Napoleon.
Let's let them have the floor.
Commissioner Marino, if you want to go first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to say that I agree with everything that has transpired, that Mayor Weinroth, congratulations, Mayor, has suggested. I too have had a communication with Valerie, and I do know of her willingness to serve. As for transmitting a letter to her, I would believe, Paul, you would probably be the one to dictate the procedure on that for us, to submit a letter to her requesting her to join us as an interim director, also knowing that we would, still take that time to do a search if necessary, but it would be obviously up to the rest of the board what their pleasure is. But I do believe that this would be a good solution for the short term. We do need to find somebody that has experience, and Valerie has been there long enough and has been Nick's deputy. So I think this would be a beneficial move for the TPA at this time.
Okay.
And those are my comments. Thank you.
I have Councilman Napoleon, and I have other board comments as well.
All right. Let's Councilman Napoleon, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino looks far too comfortable in her hotel room this morning. I want to say I do agree with the comments. I support the interim position for Valerie Nielsen. I'm still having issues with the timing of this. I'm not sure if we've discussed a timing of when we would want to have the interim step in and take over, and when Nick is comfortable stepping away. Also, if we hire Ms. Nielsen as interim, are we then foregoing a nationwide search? And if so, for how long? I want to make sure that we're still doing what we need to do to make sure we have the best person in position to lead the organization, which may turn out to be Ms. Nielsen, but I think we also owe it to ourselves and the organization to still move forward with a search. Are we going to defer the search discussion until the next meeting once we get the interim in place? I'm trying to understand the timing of what we're agreeing to this morning.
The motion that was being made was to postpone decision on selecting a search firm 90 days. Is that correct? Yes. So yeah, there is a postponement on a determination of selecting a national search firm, but it doesn't preclude that process from still continuing. It's just postponing it for 90 days to create a transitional process, I would think, with the interim director and the current director, which I think is a reasonable approach, because it doesn't preclude any further actions that the board may want to take.
Mr. Chair, if you would allow me personal privilege, I just want to point out for the record, and also for the people who are virtually watching the meeting, that Ms. Nielsen has joined the meeting at my invitation. She was watching us from afar and has joined us. If someone here wanted to get at least a verbal acknowledgement from her right now that she would accept the employment that we would be offering, which would be as the interim with no guarantee that she would be the ultimate successor as executive director, I'm sure that she would be willing to give you that acknowledgement at this point in time.
Okay, before we receive that, though, we do have members who have had their cards up for quite some time. I don't know who was first, but ladies first. We'll go start here with Christina.
Thank you so much. This has been a very interesting conversation. And appreciate that it's not necessarily the easiest conversation to have. But I do believe that we all have the interest of the organization and its success in the forefront. And I think Commissioner Sachs had made a comment earlier that had an employee been here, had Ms. Nielsen been here with her tenure, with her experience with the organization, it would have made sense for her to step up and to fill this interim role. But the fact is, she wasn't here. And I would just be remiss if we didn't at least address that and talk about we've mentioned that the position was still open when she returned. Why was that position, why was she not filled back into that position?
Is that a question or a comment?
It's both. My comment is, I think we should have that discussion, and the question is posed.
I don't know who could answer that.
So if you're asking why did I choose not to rehire Valerie into the deputy role? The short answer is you've commissioned me as the director to put the staff in place to ensure the best success and productivity of the agency. When she chose to leave, we had numerous discussions about whether that was the right course of action for her, with the understanding that if she would proceed with that, she would not be given an opportunity to be rehired. We also I've had subsequent discussions with staff who have expressed reservations about her rehire. And I had conversations with executive leadership at a partner agency, FPL, because I have friends in executive leadership, about the impact on an agency's culture of rehiring someone who has chosen to leave of their own volition and then asked to come back. And they said it's not good for the agency. So those three things, the fact that we spoke before the decision to leave was executed with an understanding that rehire would not be offered, the conversations with staff and the conversations with leadership of an agency that I respect all said to me that the culture of the agency and the direction, the strength of the agency would not be enhanced by bringing her back on board. That being said, you're the board. You're free to choose the course that you feel is best for the TPA. And one of the things that I'm most proud of as the director of the TPA is the culture of empowerment and engagement that I have sought to promote with our elected officials. So while I thank you for asking me for my input, I want to recognize that you are indeed the governing board who makes this decision, and I want to empower you to make the decision that you feel is best for the agency and for the future, collective future of Palm Beach County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So first of all, I guess I want to start with thanking Nick for your duty and your service to this board. You know, when we're talking about all of this, you know, we got to, you know, evaluate everything here. And I guess as a board member, I'm looking at the future of this board and how we, you know, at the end of the day, we're representing our community, our constituents, and how we're going to move forward. So when I think about that, unfortunately, Nick, it seems like you were given us another opportunity to see if you will reconsider, and it doesn't sound like you want to be part of the future of this board. And when we think about that, we've had someone that's been here, knows the organization. We don't know what goes on in people's personal life. And sometimes we make decisions that sometimes we regret. I'm pretty sure the individual, Valerie, probably is in that situation. I know that I've made decisions personally that I probably wish that I could have taken back. But as we look forward, I guess what I'm thinking is to have somebody at the helm with continuity in an interim basis would be probably the best, the way I see it, probably best for the organization. Instead of just having 90 days before someone leaves, having someone for 90 days or more. We don't know how long this process may take. I have been in national searches where we go back to the drawing board because we perhaps didn't like that individual. So to have someone with continuity at the helm during this process, I think would be extremely valuable. We now have an executive committee that can, make the process go through, but very similar to Commissioner Napoleon. We don't want to limit ourselves, and we do want to go out and get the best talent. So to me, the key word here is interim, with the possibility of going out and acquiring top tier talent. And that interim person is more than welcome to be part of that process. And I think we should invite that individual to be part of that process, but I don't think we should limit ourselves. I think we should try to go out there and bring the best candidate to this board. I think we owe it to our constituents. So that's all I want to say. I am in support of bringing Valerie on an interim basis. I don't know if 90 days is the proper timing. And the other thing that we've got to figure out is negotiations. I mean, we can't also just write a blank check here. So I don't know what the parameters on that will be.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Just briefly, I feel like I'm in a little bit of a position of conflict because we just recently hired Ms. Nielsen. So, but I also understand that we need to do what's right for this agency. Commissioner Lambert does bring up a good point, though, as to, why when she came back, I assumed that she would have been interested in coming back here if she's interested now. That does concern me as to why she wasn't hired back then. And that coupled with the fact that I do feel like I'm in a little bit of a position of conflict, but I'm not going to let that, though, stand in the way of doing what's right for this agency. Those are just my comments. I just felt the need to express them. Thank you.
Mayor Wilson.
Again, good morning. Being that you guys allow me to do the invocation every time I come, I don't know if I'm speaking as your spiritual advisor or as a board member. But needless to say, we always do things decent and in order. I like Mayor Weinroth, your recommendation when you clarified the one thing I wasn't comfortable with, that the vacant position or the old position, that they automatically get that. I just thought that was a path that we would create a monster for ourselves. Nick, we have the utmost respect for him. We're in the position now because it's leadership. But Nick made it clear to us all that he's moving on with his life. The interim position for 90 days, give Valerie opportunity, give us opportunity. And I don't mean any disrespect, to see what she made of. We still have that open door. Well, if it does not work out, she'll know, you'll know, and we move on to the search committee. But at the same time, we all sitting at this table have a story to tell about when we first engaged in the political arena. Many of us say to ourselves, well, in fact, my friend I was talking earlier, people be surprised when you get into this. It's not what you expect. You have to make tough decisions that affect people's lives. And I know you're all trying to do it in the right way. At some point in time, we're all not going to agree. But I think the opportunity is here. She's familiar with the process, and we need to move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you allow me just to reframe the motion so that maybe?
Yes, I would like you to do that.
Okay.
I just want to give everybody.
Okay, very good.
Give them a chance to make
Okay,
their
very good.
comments.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to move that Mayor Wilson will be our pastor from now on. It's kind of sets the tone just beautifully. But I think there's a consensus here. I think the consensus is that someone has thrown her hat into the ring for us to consider. And I think it's important that we hear from her, and not just on the phone today. I think I'd like to see, as a lawyer, I'd like to see a letter of intent by Ms. Nielsen as to what she wants, what she expects, how, and these issues of whether or not she's going to put her name in for executive director. I'd like to see that on paper. So if we need to have a little time to review her self-nomination, as well as the search committees, the recruitment firms that we have reviewed today, I think that might be in the best interest of this board. So I would go along with also what Commissioner Lambert talked about, which is give her an opportunity to put her name in, but I'd like to see her do it by letter. And we'll review her proposal as well as the recruitment firms, because we'll need to go there as well. And in closing, I'd like to say, Nick, why don't you stay on a little bit longer? But you've been a wonderful, wonderful director, and we really appreciate your leadership. That's why it's so difficult to move forward from there. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Petrolia.
Well, I have to agree 100%, Nick. You've been a true asset to this organization and to those of us who have come in to help us to understand better what we're doing and also to guide us. So you are going to be sorely missed. And this debate is pretty much about filling your shoes, which is why it has been so long and difficult for many of us. I feel uncomfortable, if I might say, to my colleagues here, about not continuing the process of the recruitment. I feel uncomfortable because I don't know that we are doing the right thing for, and not to say anything that Valerie will not be the right person, but I don't believe that we will actually open ourselves up to seeing what is available if we do not have this move forward in the recruitment process. So that's my hesitation, not so much that Valerie would like to come back, not so much that we would have her fill as an interim position. There is some concerns and hesitation that I have after hearing what Nick said about some of the staff and also the release. That is a very big concern. I didn't have that before that, but I think that it speaks to us wanting to make sure that we're making this right decision for the organization as a whole. So it would be my hope that we would not just put this off for a potential 90-day delay, but rather to continue in some fashion the recruitment, of which I would hope that Valerie would put her name in, because she probably will rise to the top, more than likely from what I'm hearing. But if she doesn't, and there is somebody else that is in a better situation to fill that, that would be doing the best thing for the TPA. Thank you.
Okay, we have calls on this side. I'm not sure who was first. Ladies first? Okay.
Thank you. Following up on Shelley's comments, it was the timing issue that I was concerned with as well. Even if Valerie decides to come on, which is not set yet, postponing going forward with another company puts us back 90 days. And that will definitely put us back past when Nick is gone. So I'm more inclined to move forward quicker. Definitely not 90 days. If not today, at least maybe 30 days to consider who we're going to select, because as I think everyone's on board with, is even if Valerie comes forward, it doesn't mean she's going to be hired. Secondly, if she does come forward and she is accepting the interim position, is there a way that Nick would then no longer be the director, but as other municipalities have done, oftentimes they'll bring on the prior director under a contract agreement, even if it's just through through what his resignation would have been, or ideally maybe even a little bit more based on what Nick's situation is. I don't know what it is, but that's something else I wanted to throw out there. And then that would actually put, if Valerie ends up being the director, it gives a longer time frame of where she gets to interact more with Nick and see the actual position and duties that will be required of her ultimately. But I'm a little bit concerned about putting too far off moving forward with a selection of a company.
Okay. Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you, Shelley, for saying that, because Nick, first of all, thank you, Nick, for your service. It's been great working with you. So We're going to miss you, as you know. And thank you, Shelley, for saying that, because I'm a little bit concerned. I don't think we want to discount what Nick has said, his opinion. So I definitely think we need to go forward with using or hiring a recruitment firm, maybe in parallel with this, but I don't think we want to discount what Nick has said. So I'm glad he said it, and it's good information to have. Thanks.
Mayor Grant.
So my comments are is that, I did speak with Nick beforehand and asked who he thought should be the interim director. And we haven't mentioned that as well. And that was Andrew Euler. And so it's not in the sense is that if as soon as Nick leaves, the TPA does not have someone that can take over. So I want to make sure that the TPA board is aware that Nick does have someone in place in case, he's unable to fill the rest of his resignation. With that being said, the aspect of appointing an interim director means that as soon as that interim director is appointed in that day, Nick is no longer executive director and he is no longer working for the TPA. And it is unfair to ask for him to step in that second role. And with that, he has about, 7 or 8 days after the January meeting. And so that's kind of where we should either appoint an interim director after the end of the December meeting or the end of the January meeting, so that we have that continuity as soon as that, Nick's last meeting is it, that's it. And then he can celebrate with a beer, so to speak. And those are my points. I think that, this is a lot for us all to take in today. And so to table this item for next month is something that I would be in favor for, and I'd file that motion so that it's not 90 days to hire a next agency. It is, or recruiting agency. It's not 30 days, that we're not hiring Valerie immediately, that we can digest all the information that we have. We can reach out to Nick, Valerie, or any of the different organizations that applied, because Paul, I believe we can speak to any of these organizations individually. There's no cone of silence.
No, because
You have to,
just for the record, he said no code of silence has been imposed.
so that if we want to speak to any of these organizations to get more information, we can do that within the next 30 days. And so that is my motion.
All right, Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What an interesting meeting we've had today, huh? I want to first echo the comments made by basically everybody that Nick has done a magnificent job, and I've loved working with you. And if I had my druthers, we wouldn't be having this discussion now, because you would reconsider and stay. At the same time, I've actually, under Nick, Valerie worked for years, and I had a great working relationship with Valerie too. And I do think that she would make a capable, executive director, interim director. But there's a couple of things that I think came up during the meeting that I have some bit of discomfort with. One is the idea of displacing Nick and telling him to go. Maybe if he wants to do that, he can do that. But to me, it means it's like we're kicking him out the door. And I don't think that's a dignified way to end his tenure here, where he's done a magnificent job. And the second is that something I heard for the first time too, was the issues about culture and the reservations. I hadn't heard that before. I hadn't thought about that. And so it feels to me that we may be kind of rushing to judgment on that. If the action item is to decide today, I think I have to give it more thought, frankly. And so I think you stole my thunder, Mayor. I was saying maybe the December meeting would be a time where we can, in the month, I know, recognize that Thanksgiving is in between there, but we can talk to the search firms. We can talk to Valerie. We can talk more to Nick. I haven't had those discussions really up until now. So I think it would be my preference that we kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Nick's not going anywhere until we tell him to go somewhere. So we still have him in the meantime. So in my view, let's just be thoughtful about it and make the right decision rather than kind of pulling a trigger quickly today. So that would be my preference, is that we decide this either in December at our meeting or in January.
Councilwoman.
Yes, I wanted to echo the comments of the mayor here and the council member here in terms of how we're moving forward with this. I come from a city that, of course, a lot of things go down in the city. So I really want to, look at this in a sense of you have a search committee, recruitment firms, 4 of them that you have already on board to be able to move forward. The reservation I feel is with bringing someone on. I didn't know that there was somebody that is waiting in the wings to be able to take over after Nick leaves. So that changes the whole story for me, because I was thinking that with the offer made that there was no one to take his place. But since there is, I think that we should move forward with that. And the person who is, and I'm sure she's very capable to throw a hat in the ring for this search firm. Because trust me when I tell you that, when you don't get the process right, people will know. And I just want to caution us to make sure that as we move forward, that we're doing this in terms of what the policies are and what the bylaws say, because we don't want to make this mistake of having to pay someone because we made a mistake. That's my thoughts.
I too, the comments from Mayor Grant and from Councilperson Thompson spoke to me well, that we've gained some information that I at least didn't know coming into the meeting. I definitely want to thank Nick for the interactions that I've had with him, and thank Valerie for the interactions that I've had with her. What's that? So I think the suggestion that seems to be emerging is, let's do a combined thing. Well, let me comment that one that particularly spoke to me, that Councilperson Thompson made. If bringing on an interim person pushes Nick out the door willy-nilly, that doesn't feel very good to me either. So I would like some sort of fashion of Nick continuing as director. I don't know what it's called, interim sort of director. I'm not sure what the right term is, but I'm sure there are legal people who can help us with that. So I would be in favor of that overlap approach, and then moving this to December, also in favor of not slowing down the search process too much.
So we got cards over here, I think.
Thank you. Just briefly, before Mayor Grant spoke, I had a similar question. It was going to be, had we identified anyone internally who was capable of keeping the ship afloat in the interim? And I think that question has probably been answered. I don't know if Nick can elaborate more on the qualifications of this person, or whether he feels the person is comfortable for, leading us through that period. But I think that's important to the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to again recognize Andrew Euler is one of the 2 deputy directors that I have established at the TPA. And I would say he is very competent to facilitate the transitional period and to function in that interim capacity. And so I would make the board aware of that as an option to you for Andrew to serve in that capacity, and allow you to focus maybe more of your time and attention on the search process for the next director. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just clarify, because there's 2 issues here that I think need to be adjudicated. First one is, are we going to have an interim executive director? Is that the correct term? And then should we do national search? And they don't have to be decided in the same motion. But as far as adjudicating the interim executive director, assuming that Valerie was appointed today, or the board showed willingness to appoint, and then we engaged maybe the chair to execute a 90-day contract with Valerie for 90 days that I know would extend past your contract expiration date. Is my assumption that whoever the candidate is, that you would not have a problem in a transition period with them? I mean, is there going to be any concerns about you and Valerie having to work together to accomplish a transition?
I'm going to look to the attorney, but I think what I've heard and what I would affirm is that if the board chooses to designate someone in the interim capacity, that they should also choose to avail themselves of the provision in my agreement to terminate my employment at that time, so that you don't have an executive director and an interim director simultaneously.
Right, and we don't want that, and we recognize by operation of law, if we did appoint an interim executive director, that you by operation of law would no longer be the executive director. Is that a fair way to put it, counsel?
Correct.
Okay, so my question extends beyond that. You're no longer the executive director, but there's sort of a business and ethical obligation, I would say, to help facilitate a transition, whether you're actively the director or not. Is that going to be an issue?
I'm really not sure what you're asking me. If I'm no longer employed by the TPA, are you asking me, would I entertain a contract to function as a consultant in some capacity? Or would you asking, would I answer the phone if someone called?
Would you
me?
answer the phone? It was a nice way of saying, would you answer the phone?
Sure.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say in follow-up to Commissioner Kerner's comments is Nick would be excused from his contract under, I think, what's being discussed. But understand that he is getting as severance 90 days worth of pay and benefits. And it would seem that maybe there's some room there to work out some sort of a consulting arrangement, if you will, in light of all that. But that's something for the board to discuss with Nick.
I'll table any other questions, except to say, I think we need to adjudicate the interim executive director decision at some point, and then we can have, while we're all here, we can discuss a national search or what we want to do in that regard, because there's been some great points made about not slowing that down, but at the same time, and with all due respect to the present executive director, who's done a heck of a job. I'm not engaged in this organization that often. I watch from afar, but you've indicated by contract that you want to move on from this position, and that vision is no longer the one in front of us. Your vision through this board. I think that's a fair and kind way to put it. And at the same time, we're not asking or evaluating Valerie to be the deputy director anymore. She's come back, and we're now talking about the highest position in this organization. And so I don't have any concerns about the conflicts between your vision and her vision, your decision, which I respect, not to rehire her into your administration, but we're no longer talking about that dynamic. We're talking about bringing on an interim executive director so that we can have some stable leadership through the holidays and through the transition. And I thank Mayor Weinroth for injecting this issue into the agenda, because I think it's very important. And I think we ought to decide what we want to do in that regard. I would love to see, and the county commission has always been, in my view, a proponent of hiring from within, promoting from within. There will be culture issues. There will be conflicts in visions and leadership that happens in every organization, but that ought not be the reason why we take our foot off the accelerator today and keep this organization moving forward. And so I would support Mayor Weinroth's motion.
All right, one more comment.
Thank you, Chair. Nick, I want to thank you because I'm the newest member to the TPA. I've been serving for about 6 months. And when I met Nick, he says, I'm passionate about transportation. And if you know me, I'm passionate about a lot of things. So thank you for your service. A lot of good points have been made. Couple things. Coming from a corporate background, sometimes you don't rehire people. When you usually leave, you don't come back. It's kind of one of those industry items. I'm not opposed of having Miss Valerie or Miss Nielsen come back and in the interim basis and us continue the search. I think we owe it to this organization for us to continue the search and see what's out there. I also like to hire from within, and we do have viable options. We have someone in Mr. Euler and also a Miss Nelson that served in this organization. But I also have what I heard today that I didn't know from before was a culture issue. And I understand you always have issues with culture, but it's really important that you're happy where you work. And when we were having these discussions, and I'm not pointing out anyone, I was looking in our audience, which is a lot of the members of the TPA, and their body language was very interesting to me. So I would like to be able to have conversations with the people that are proponents of being the next executive director, because I was just watching body language. And to me, collaboration and culture is important.
What we don't need is to bring someone in or back or remove, and that we have other areas of the organization start falling apart. So I know we have a hard job ahead of us, and I know we'll make the best decisions, but that's kind of my observation for today. I think we should continue the search, decide on one of these recruitment firms, definitely not wait 90 days. And we should, speak to the individuals that are interested in applying for this position.
All right,
Thank you, Mr.
I want to
Chair.
get back to.
Mayor, I'm
But
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead,
I
Mayor.
also have
Yeah.
Michael Napoleon that has his hand raised as
I
well.
tell- All right, Michael, you're on.
Thank you. I've heard everyone's comments, and I think we're all struggling with what to do here because this is an important and difficult decision. I have a suggestion which is not quite ready for a motion, and I need council to tell me if it even could be a motion. But my suggestion is that we ask the newly formed EC to meet with the two potential interim candidates, which would be Ms. Nielsen and Mr. And then come back to this board in December with a recommendation as to who we recommend the board hire as interim, and the board can do what the board wants. And then at that meeting also, we make a decision on moving forward with the search firm. I don't think we should make a decision today on who we appoint as interim, because candidly, no one's really discussed this in detail with either the two potential interim candidates. And I think we owe it to the board and the staff that we have those conversations. And I think it's an appropriate delegation to the executive committee to at least have those discussions with the two candidates, then make a recommendation to the board at the December meeting. And then, perhaps the timeline would be, we propose at that meeting, we vote on making an interim director of whichever person effective January 1. Nick's last day could be December 31st. And then we move forward in 2022 with an interim director and a plan to conduct a nationwide search going forward. And that nationwide search would include whoever we choose as interim director as well.
Mayor?
Briefly, I just want to confirm that I was also aware of, and I think it might be that I have a better view than some of my colleagues here of body language in the audience. And I think that's very important to take into consideration.
All right, we're having repeat cards coming up. No?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, question.
obviously personnel decisions are the worst thing we have to do in sunshine. So this has been a little difficult, but I think that the conversation we're having here has been very useful. And obviously, Nick understands that we all appreciate that his service to us has always been exemplary. We just went through a merit increase with him. And in fact, he took less than we wanted to give him. So this is not a situation where we're trying to throw him out. It's a situation where he has personally made a decision that it's time for him to move on. I also think that if I'm reading between the lines, Nick is hoping that we will make a decision to relieve him of the restrictions that this contract is placing on him, that he cannot look and engage really in a search for another position and feel comfortable accepting that position during this period of time, even though he has made the decision, it's time to move on. So I'm not going to ask him whether he's looking for another position. That's not really my right to know. But I think that we owe it to Nick at this point. I think he's made it clear that he wants to live by the terms of this contract. And he has also said several times that he doesn't feel that there should be an executive director and an interim director at the same time. So I think we have two decisions in front of us right now. I think and to be honest, and I'll go back to my original point, I need someone who is going to be totally focused on what's going on with the TPA. The infrastructure bill is going to push trillions of dollars out into the states, and the TPA is going to be a factor in how that money is distributed. So over $1 trillion has already been approved. There's probably another 3 trillion coming. We need to be prepared to be dealing with that in a formative fashion. So this is not the time to be rudderless. I think after hearing all the conversation here today, I would remove from my motion the 90 days so that the executive board has the opportunity, if they deem it necessary to engage the firm earlier than 90 days, begin that process. I think we need to give Nick the opportunity to depart. He has let us know that this is no longer in his career path. He wants to move on. I would say that we need to terminate his employment with us as of Friday, this Friday, and have a new interim in here on Monday. And that interim, which I'm proposing in my motion, would be Valerie. And then we can go from there. So the motion that I'm going to tighten up, and again, we can vote it up or down. I know there was a motion to table, but I didn't hear a second. So unless there's a second on the motion to table, then if there's a motion, then the motion to table would come ahead of the motion to approve.
I think that motion was withdrawn.
Was it withdrawn?
No, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Mayor.
Margie.
It was Vice Mayor Weiss's motion that he withdrew. There was no seconder for a motion to table.
Okay, so we still have the substitute motion, which I'm just going to change to take out the 90 days.
And then Mayor, for my benefit, if you can please restate that before the board takes a vote, so everyone's clear on what you're asking them to do.
Oh, yeah, it's clear as mud. All right. The substitute motion on the table would be to postpone the hiring of a national search firm and hire former Deputy Director of Multimodal Development as the interim director. And that would be the motion on the table. I'm not going to add to that the termination of our current executive director. If this motion passed, then we can address the second part of this.
You know,
So you're making two separate, it would be a separate
It
motion.
will be a second motion. If this passes, then my second motion would be to effectively terminate Nick's employment as of Friday.
Is the motion on the table? Is there a second?
so
Second.
there's two.
Hold it. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
All right. Now, before we take the vote, we still have some member comment cards up.
Yeah.
I think she was first, yes.
Yes, and then Mayor, I'm sorry to keep interrupting everyone. I do have a comment card that I gave you, and I also
I-
would like to say something
yes,
if that's
I
possible.
have the comment card.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I just like to say that you really, really, really have to consider the staff that is here. There is no way that you can not have a conversation about replacement if you don't talk to the staff that is actually here. That is just my brief comments, but I really want to stress the fact that they should play a part in who their director is as well.
Andy was up next.
I was under the impression that maybe we talked about it, but nobody had made a motion to table. I will make a motion to table the first substitute motion until our December meeting.
And I will second that motion.
All right, so we have a substitute motion on the table to table this until December, and there's a second? Okay,
May I speak to the motion?
please do, sir.
All right. Obviously, it's easier to put off something than to do it. And I understand that there's a lot of stuff on the table. So I'm not faulting you for doing this, but remember the person that we've put on the table now as a potential interim director, as Commissioner Paduzzi just said, they just hired her for another position. And I think that this is going to cloud their view of their new hire in West Palm Beach. And I hate to create this problem for her. And I think that this is not a decision we should be putting off. I mean, the reason we are having this emergency meeting today, I think, is that we need to make a decision. So I would really hope that we can make a decision one way or another. If this is not the way that we're going to go as far as Valerie, then let's make that decision right here today.
I would respond just to say, I had a fantastic working relationship with Valerie. So please, Valerie, do not under any circumstance take this to mean that I don't think you'd be a capable executive director. I think you would be. I said that earlier. I just think as a board, we need to be thoughtful about this and make sure we're making the right decision after contemplating it. The idea of appointing Miss Valerie Nielsen was not on the agenda today. So that matters to me. And in addition to all of the other levels of concern that I articulated earlier, the comments by Nick, the observations with respect to staff, all of that matters. And so I'd like to have time to discuss this with some additional people and think about it some more before we pull the trigger on that. And I think the December meeting is not that far away either. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Mayor, and I understand where you're coming from, but I do think this is something we should be doing in December, not right this minute.
The same. I do appreciate your comments, but it feels like it's a little rushed. And I think there's quite a bit of discomfort in the room with doing that. I think the point that December is not that far away, but we can address it. And I think everybody wants to feel it wasn't on the agenda. We want to feel comfortable to communicate with all the people that need to be communicated with. So I support the idea of moving it to December.
Yeah, we got
Go ahead,
Joel.
Mayor.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we have two issues at hand. The first one is hiring a national firm, which if I read the room correctly, I think most of us, 90% of us are in favor of hiring a national firm to conduct this process. I think that decision should be made today. That's why we had an emergency meeting. We should have, and I'll make that motion. But we should move forward with that here today. That starts moving the ball forward. The second item is hiring an interim executive director. I think that could be postponed. I don't think we need to make a decision on that today. I think Nick has someone that he trusts, and then there's someone else that the board believes that could lead us forward in this executive search period. With that being said, I think it's also unfair for Ms. Nielsen that this has all changed on her. So if we move forward with hiring a national firm, would she be willing to take on a job that might be for 90 days? So it's also not fair for us to assume that she's going to jump into a position for 90 days and she may not get the executive director position. So I think we should I'm making a substitute motion to hire
Substitute of the substitute motion.
a substitute to a substitute to hire Slavin, which is Commissioner Weiss
I'm gonna get to him.
recommendation. I also reviewed the packet, and I think we should move forward and hire this executive committee, at least engage with them.
Second.
Motion is second. By who? All right, so we have a motion second. Paul, can you help us through this? Please?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're headed for a car crash here of
Yeah,
motions.
I think it's a Tesla and the remote.
Yeah,
controls in place
exactly.
there.
No, exactly. Well, we're going to try to help you a little bit through it right now. First of all, you had Mayor Weinroth's motion. The next thing that happened was that Council Member Thompson moved to table that item. Now, technically, a motion to table is not debatable. However, I would interpret Council Member Thompson's motion to be a motion to continue this item for discussion until the December meeting, because I think he did mention he wanted it to come back at that particular point. I would recommend to you that you decide what you're going to do with regard to his motion, because it seems like everybody is coming up with different motions that they want to make, and no criticism. They're all worthy of your consideration, but I think you need to dispose of this situation first. Either you're going to move forward with basically continuing the discussion on Commissioner Weinroth's motion, or you're not. And if you're not, then his motion is before you.
All right, so what do you think? We should vote on the original motion?
Yeah, I think you should should vote on Councilmember Thompson's motion to continue consideration.
We should vote on which motion? I'm confused.
Vote on the motion to table to December.
Yeah,
Tabling
except
motion we should
except
vote on.
it's not a table. It's a motion to continue discussion.
To this discussion. All right, do you wanna-
Can I make a comment, please? I've had my hand up for 10 minutes.
What hand?
I've been waving and everything.
I saw you waving. My hand's up too.
Thank you. And I don't know where we are in motions, but I'd like to just make an observation. One is our task today was to put forth whether we hire a search firm or not. Our task was not to hire an interim director. And our task was also to put together an executive committee to follow through. So what our goal here today should be is, regardless of what we do, we need to hire a search firm. Whether it's today, 90, it should be today, because even if we put in an interim director, we still need to be hiring a search firm. If the interim director fits the qualifications, then they get hired, but we still need a search firm. And we don't want to postpone it any longer because it makes the search longer. So we put the interim we put the search firm to a vote now. As for an interim director, the executive committee should sit down with the staff, with the people that might be interested in this position, and talk to them. This is not a decision we should be making today. So those would be my two suggestions. How they get incorporated into today's motion, because there's 15 motions on the table, I have no idea, but I think they should be considered. Now I will unraise my hand now.
Okay. Going back to the motion that was made to table the decision on the interim.
Yes, I believe
that
I made
include-
that motion.
Okay, so that's a separate issue. Then we could come back and discuss whether or not we select a search firm today and take a separate vote on that.
Yes.
Okay. So what motion now?
I put a motion to table about 20, 30 minutes ago. I did not get a second. So
All right, so we have a motion on the table to table the discussion. about
Continue,
Executive.
Continue.
continue.
not table, continue.
Table continue. It could be tabled with
Continue
time
the-
certain. Continue.
The
to
discussion
next
for hiring a
discussion for
firm.
hiring an interim director at the next
No,
meeting.
no.
No.
Just the
No.
hiring.
No.
No.
interim.
There's two
Andy, if
separate
you can
issues.
please restate your.
Hiring
Allow me to
search
clarify.
firms.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My motion to table just related to mayor, yes. The mayor's substitute motion, which related to the appointment of an
Right.
interim executive director.
That's-
After this motion to table, I think then it would be suitable for us to then have the discussion on the search firm and
Search
whether
firm.
we want to engage one
As a
today.
separate issue, right.
Separate issue. Let's vote on the motion to table first,
To
please.
continue.
How about if everybody just remove their motions?
No.
So for my clarification, if I may.
All right,
Mr.
do-
Chair.
Are we clear with the motion and
No,
second? we
Mr.
have?
Chair, if I can
No.
please restate it so I can make it clear for the record
Thank
for
you.
when you review the minutes. The motion on the a motion to table the interim director decision until December 16th.
Perfectly said.
Thank you.
Are we clear on that?
And if you would like
Alright.
me to put continue or postpone, I can do that as well.
Paul said continue. So we go with what he says. Now, how do we take this vote? Is this a roll call vote or? Okay, roll call.
So just
point
to
of
restate, the motion on the floor is to continue
question?
the discussion on the interim director until the December 16th meeting. I have a motion by Councilmember Thompson and a second by Mayor Petrolia.
You had a clarification question?
Clarification question is, it was indicated that there was more comments, and so I don't know if we have to read those before we vote or not.
Let me just give her the opportunity she wants.
I think you would be wise to see, a motion to table is not debatable, but a motion to continue or postpone discussion is. So if you want to take any comments that are out there. That's
I'd
Mr.
like us
Chair,
to
it's up to
vote
you.
'cause we've gotten a lot of good comments. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on what we're asking you to vote on. That
But
was,
this motion isn't on the agenda, is it? So don't we have to put this on the agenda to discuss it?
No, it's basically regarding an agenda item,
Okay.
and that's,
transcendental relationship. Okay.
If you're
roll call.
ready. To be clear, the motion on the floor is to continue the discussion of the interim director to December 16th. Steve Wilson,
So I'm setting the tone, so my vote would be yes.
Yvette Drucker,
Yes.
Andy Thompson,
Yes.
Stephen Grant,
No.
Shelley Petrolia,
Yes.
Joel Flores, Jim Koretsky,
Yes.
Christopher McVoy,
Yes.
Joni Brinkman,
Yes.
Catherine Waldron,
Yes.
Chelsea Reed,
No.
Dave Kerner,
No.
Maria Marino,
Yes.
Maria Sachs, Greg Weiss,
No.
Shirley Lanier,
Yes.
Michael Napoleon,
Yes.
Christina Lambert,
Yes.
Joseph Paduzzi,
Yes.
Robert Weinroth,
No.
Fred Pinto,
Yes.
yes, me too. So 16-5, that motion passes.
Okay. All right, now how do we approach the discussion on moving forward with selection, whether we should select one of the firms today?
Yeah.
What was it? Repeat the motion.
My motion was to proceed with Slavin, which was the recommendation by Commissioner or Vice Mayor Weiss.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is everyone clear on?
And I'd like to add the comment that we just have the executive committee. I don't know any of the four differences between the firms, but it's kind of in the sense is that having a recommendation besides one or two members might be better. But that's my comment.
That's a different motion.
No, this is for hiring Slavin, correct?
Right.
And I'm saying that there's three other candidates and I don't have enough information to select one today because of this emergency meeting. So I'd like to put it to the executive committee, and we have that discussion next month, but that's my comments. So I'm going to be voting in
Making
favor
a
of it.
substitute motion that.
No. I'm going to be voting against Slavin, not to say that I'm not going to
All right,
hire
so
in the
you're just
future,
advocating.
so that we have the ability to have an executive committee make a recommendation first.
Mr. Chair, I have my hand up for a while.
Who's speaking?
Michael Napoleon.
Yes, sir, you're on.
I think this is the time for me to make a substitute motion to the motion that's pending. Is that I would recommend that this board delegate to the executive committee to come back at the December meeting with a recommendation to the board on a search committee and on an interim executive director. So that way we can have a better discussion at that meeting once the executive committee has a chance to flesh out all of the potential candidates, staff concerns and issues. So we have a better discussion, because I think the interim director was kind of popped up out of the blue today and no one's fully prepared to have that discussion today. And I think the executive committee is in a position to be able to do the work between now and December to come back to this board with a recommendation on both the potential interim director and a search committee, a search firm. That's my substitute motion.
I'll second.
I would second that.
All right, everybody, is everybody clear on what the motion is?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
And I'm sorry, I missed my seconder. I believe it was. Thank you. Okay. Again, roll call.
roll call, yes.
Okay. Running out of voting tables. Steve Wilson.
No.
No.
Oh, the
it's a
substitute.
substitute motion.
So I'm sorry, Mayor, I should have restated it for you. So there's a substitute motion to direct the executive committee to evaluate the recruitment firms and potential interim directors and come back in December to the board in December with their recommendations.
Absolutely.
And Mayor, if I can have you turn your.
Yes, thank you.
Yvette Drucker,
Yes.
Andy Thompson,
Yes.
Steve Grant,
Yes.
Shelley Petrolia,
Yes.
Joel Flores.
Yes.
Jim Koretsky,
Yes.
Christopher McVoy,
Yes.
Joni Brinkman,
Yes.
Catherine Waldron,
Yes.
Chelsea Reed,
Yes.
Dave Kerner,
Yes.
Maria Marino,
Yes.
Maria Sachs,
Yes.
Greg Weiss,
Yes.
Shirley Lanier,
Yes.
Michael Napoleon,
Yes.
Christina Lambert,
Yes.
Joseph Paduzzi,
Yes.
Robert Weinroth,
Yes.
Fred Pinto.
Yes.
It passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Before everyone leaves, I did get a comment card request from Valerie. She'd like an opportunity to address us. So please come up now. Sorry it's taking so long.
Is this on?
Yep.
Right. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here and to see you all again. It's been an interesting discussion this morning and uncomfortable discussion. As someone who's been here the longest after Nick for the last, I was actually hired 7 years ago this month, but was with the agency about 6.5 years. And yes, I left to Alaska, which had nothing to do with the TPA. My husband and I wanted to go experience where I had lived when I grew up, but sometimes I did learn a lot from that. And as Nick said, he did say, if you leave, I can't just hire you back. But he did go on vacation my last 2 weeks. And sometimes you make a decision and you realize that maybe it wasn't the best decision or that you can't turn around. I've learned a lot from that. I really wish that Nick wasn't leaving. It makes me really sad. This agency is like family to me. And I have been a part of watching it become the TPA under Nick's leadership. He's been an excellent leader, and I think he's invaluable to this agency. I want to say that, yes, I am working with the city of West Palm Beach. I'm really grateful for that opportunity. There's a lot going on. It's an exciting time for multimodal transportation. I'm discovering ways we could have been collaborating much better. But this agency is like family to me, and I'm here to help. I am in a tricky spot where, my current boss and mayor and commissioners want to know what's going to happen. So that's where I'm at. I do think that we make an excellent team here at the TPA, and Andrew, the other deputy, we work really well together, and all the staff here. So I just want to say that I appreciate all of your time. It's been awesome working with all of you. I do wish Nick would stay, and I'm here to help. And that's what I wanted to share with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. All right, if there are no further questions or comments, we have no other items on the agenda today. I'd like to say
Mayor,
to
I'm
the,
sorry, if I may just state something for,
sure.
and I'm sure my husband watching this is not gonna be happy that I open my mouth, but normally you just see me behind the screen. My name is Margarita Pierce. I am the executive administrator. I just wanted to reassure the board that we have a very capable and competent staff. We work really hard to hire great planners and great leaders. So I did want to reassure you that the leadership that we have in place will do a fantastic job to keep the train moving and to keep us on the right path. So I did want to reassure you that the staff we do have in place will do that for you very competently and they would do a great job. So thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your comments and enlightenment, which I think you've told us something that we already knew, but thanks for that reinforcement of the commitment. I also would like to say it's been an honor and a privilege to serve as chair the last year. We have a lot of work in front of us as a board, and we need to continue to move forward. And I wish the best success for our new chair and mayor of the county and all of the other members on the new executive committee to get, roll our sleeves up and get the job done. So thank you all.
Can I make one more?
Go ahead.
Very brief remark. I want to echo Margie's comments and just share with the board, every now and then I get a chance to share with you these terms of the industry. And we introduced you to the term mammals and the middle-aged men in Lycra. And I want to introduce you to a term that we have coined internally to the TPA staff. And that is, she is the Margician, because Margie competently performs so many tasks. And I just wanted to appreciate her formally, publicly, and say, I'm so thankful for you and the work that you do for the TPA to make this agency run very, very well. We will be reaching out to executive committee members to schedule that meeting. We do have that as a takeaway from today. Thank you for convening that group. And I do want to remind everyone who has not yet registered, we are doing a roundtable discussion with our partners in both Broward County and Miami-Dade County on Monday afternoon, December 6th. That's right here to talk about how they implemented a transportation surtax at a countywide level. What lessons learned have they benefited from? What would they have done differently? And so if you haven't put that on your calendar already, but you're interested in participating in that, please take opportunity to register. I believe the link to register is palmbeachtpa.org/roundtable, all one word. So if you have an opportunity to join us, we would really appreciate your participation in that. That's Monday afternoon, December 6th.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.